Margaret Hastings had spent 32 Christmases hanging the same decorations. Every year, the tiny blue house at the end of Cedar Grove lit up like a memory someone refused to let die. White lights wrapped around the porch rails. Hand-painted wooden angels stood in the yard. And hanging above the front door was a faded sign her husband Daniel had carved by hand before cancer took him 8 years earlier. Christmas lives here. Neighbors smiled when they passed the house. Children begged parents to drive by it every December. Even delivery drivers slowed down to admire it. But this year was different. Because this year, someone decided Margaret's grief was against community standards. And that someone was Vanessa Carlton. Vanessa had moved into Cedar Grove 6 months earlier, arriving in a white luxury SUV with mirrored sunglasses, a designer dog, and the kind of smile that only appeared when other people were watching. Within weeks, she had joined the HOA board. Within 2 months, she controlled it. And by Thanksgiving, half the neighborhood was terrified of her. She fined people for garbage bins left out 20 minutes too long. She sent violation notices over wind chimes. One elderly veteran received a warning because his American flag looked sun-faded. But Vanessa's real obsession was appearances. She wanted Cedar Grove to look luxury modern, minimalist, elegant, magazine perfect. Margaret's Christmas decorations didn't fit that image. Especially not the giant handmade nativity scene Daniel had built with his own hands 20 years earlier. Vanessa hated it the second she saw it. "You can't seriously think this looks tasteful," she muttered one afternoon while staring at the yard. Margaret had heard her, but she simply smiled politely. People seemed to enjoy it. Vanessa looked around with disgust. "It looks cluttered." Margaret kept untangling lights. "My husband made most of these." Vanessa's expression changed for half a second. Not sympathy. Annoyance. "Well, maybe it's time for an update." Margaret said nothing. Because widows learn something about people. They learn who gets uncomfortable around grief, and who treats memories like inconveniences. 3 days later, Margaret received the first letter. Official HOA notice. She adjusted her reading glasses slowly while standing in the kitchen. Violation, excessive holiday display. Violation, obstruction of aesthetic harmony. Violation, religious display exceeding community guidelines. She blinked twice, then laughed softly. Not because it was funny, because it felt ridiculous. Until she reached the bottom. Failure to comply within 72 hours will result in a daily fine of $500. Margaret sat down hard at the kitchen table. $500 a day. Her late husband's medical bills had destroyed most of their savings years earlier. She lived carefully now. Quietly. Every dollar mattered. And Vanessa knew it. The next morning, Margaret walked to the HOA office carrying a tin of homemade cookies. Because she still believed kindness fixed misunderstandings. Vanessa didn't even offer her a seat. "Mrs. Hastings, this isn't personal." Margaret nodded gently. "I figured there must be some mistake." "There is." Vanessa slid a folder across the desk. "These decorations violate updated neighborhood standards." Margaret opened the folder slowly. The new rules had been approved 2 days earlier. 2 days. After 32 years of decorations, nobody had complained about. "My husband built these," Margaret whispered. Vanessa folded her arms. "That doesn't exempt you from policy." Margaret looked down at the photo attached to the complaint. Daniel standing beside the nativity scene years earlier. Laughing. Healthy. Alive. Somehow Vanessa had printed that too. "I'm asking for compassion," Margaret said quietly. Vanessa leaned back in her chair. "And I'm asking for compliance." Margaret left without the cookies. That night, snow began falling lightly over Cedar Grove. Margaret sat alone in the living room, holding Daniel's old red scarf. The house felt painfully quiet. Christmas music played softly from a dusty radio. And outside, the lights continued glowing, like they were trying to hold the house together. Then came the second notice. Final warning. Decorations must be removed by tomorrow evening. Margaret stared at the paper for nearly 10 minutes. Then folded it carefully. Then unfolded it again. Because some pain arrives too absurdly to feel real. Across the street, 12-year-old Eli Martinez watched everything from his bedroom window. He loved Margaret. Everyone did. She baked cookies for half the neighborhood. She remembered birthdays. When Eli's father lost his job, Margaret secretly left grocery gift cards in their mailbox every week for 2 months. And now she sat alone crying at her kitchen table. Eli grabbed his phone. He started recording from his window. At first, it was just a short video. Margaret outside fixing an angel decoration while snow fell around her. Then Vanessa walked into frame. High heels crunching across the snow. Clipboard in hand. Even from far away, her body language looked aggressive. Eli zoomed in. "You have until tonight," Vanessa snapped. Margaret kept her voice calm. "I just need more time." "You've had enough time. These decorations mean a great deal to me." Vanessa rolled her eyes dramatically. "This neighborhood is not your personal grief museum." Eli froze. Even through the phone speaker, the sentence sounded cruel. Margaret looked like she'd been slapped. Vanessa continued. "You're lowering property values." Margaret's lips trembled slightly. "My husband made these before he died." "And he's dead," Vanessa replied coldly. "You need to move on." Silence. Even the wind seemed to stop. Margaret stood motionless. Eli's breathing became shaky behind the camera. Then Margaret quietly asked something heartbreaking. "Could I at least keep the nativity scene until Christmas morning?" Vanessa smirked. "No." And then she did something worse. She reached down and ripped the extension cord from the lawn. Darkness swallowed the yard instantly. The angels. The lights. The nativity scene. Everything. Gone. Margaret gasped softly. The porch sign flickered once before dying. "Christmas lives here." Dark. Eli stopped recording only after Vanessa walked away smiling. By midnight, he uploaded the clip online. He titled it, "HOA President Bullies Widow Over Christmas Decorations." Nobody expected what happened next. By morning, the video had 30,000 views. By afternoon, 200,000. By evening, it exploded across every social platform imaginable. People were furious. Comments flooded in faster than Eli could read them. She told a widow to move on. "Absolute monster. Cancel this woman immediately." "I'm crying." Someone help Margaret. Then internet detectives arrived. And Vanessa's perfect image began collapsing piece by piece. Former coworkers described her as abusive. Old neighbors shared stories about harassment. A waitress posted security footage of Vanessa screaming at restaurant staff over almond milk. A charity event organizer claimed Vanessa once demanded VIP seating, away from poor people. The internet devoured every story. But Vanessa still believed she could control the situation. That afternoon, she posted a statement online. "The video has been deceptively edited. I support holiday celebrations within reasonable community guidelines. That made things worse, because Eli had uploaded the full unedited footage, including the moment Vanessa said, "And he's dead, you need to move on." Millions watched it, over and over. Meanwhile, Margaret had no idea any of this was happening. She didn't use social media. She was simply sitting alone in her dim kitchen, trying to figure out which decorations she could afford to put into storage. Then her doorbell rang. She opened the door carefully. A young couple stood there holding replacement Christmas lights. "We saw the video," the woman said softly. Behind them stood another family. And another. And another. One man carried hot chocolate. A teenager carried extension cords. An older woman held a wreath. Margaret looked stunned. "I don't understand." The young woman smiled through tears. "We came to help." Within an hour, 20 neighbors filled the yard. Someone repaired the broken wiring. Someone cleaned snow off the nativity scene. Children rehung ornaments. One man climbed a ladder to restore the roof lights. Margaret stood in the middle of it all, crying openly now. Not from sadness. From disbelief. For 8 years after Daniel died, loneliness had become her normal. And suddenly strangers were surrounding her with warmth. Then came the surprise nobody expected. A black pickup truck pulled into the driveway. A huge man stepped out wearing a heavy coat and boots. He introduced himself quietly. "My name's Carl." Margaret shook his hand. "I own the hardware store downtown." He opened the truck bed. Inside were brand new decorations. Professional lights. Fresh garlands. Large illuminated reindeer. And a massive glowing star. Margaret looked overwhelmed. "Oh no, I can't afford." "You don't owe me a dime," Carl interrupted. He pointed toward the street. "Frankly, ma'am, half this town's ready to adopt you after that video." People laughed softly. But the tension shifted when another car appeared. Vanessa's SUV. The entire yard fell silent. Vanessa stepped out wearing oversized sunglasses despite the cloudy sky. Probably hiding from cameras. Because now there were cameras everywhere. Local reporters had started arriving. Vanessa forced a fake smile. "I think things have gotten out of hand." Nobody answered. She looked directly at Margaret. "I'm willing to reduce the fines." A neighbor snapped back instantly. "Reduce?" Another shouted. "She should sue you." Vanessa's jaw tightened. Margaret raised a hand gently, calming everyone. Because even humiliated, Vanessa expected kindness from the woman she hurt. That's what bullies misunderstand. Kind people are not weak. They simply choose restraint. Vanessa walked closer. "If you remove some decorations, I can probably make this situation disappear." Margaret looked at her for a long moment. Snowflakes drifted between them. Then Margaret quietly asked, "Why are you doing this?" Vanessa blinked. "What? Why does this bother you so much?" For the first time, Vanessa looked uncomfortable. Because nobody had asked her that before. Not angrily. Not accusingly. Honestly. Margaret continued softly. "These decorations hurt no one." Vanessa crossed her arms defensively. "This neighborhood has standards." "No," Margaret replied gently, "this is something else." The crowd remained completely silent. And suddenly, Vanessa looked exposed. Not powerful. Just small. Margaret's voice stayed calm. "When Daniel died, I thought if I stopped decorating, then the house would finally feel empty." Vanessa stared at her. "These lights remind me love was here once." Nobody moved. Nobody even coughed. Margaret smiled sadly. And maybe that scares people who don't have much warmth in their own lives. Vanessa's face hardened instantly. There you go, playing victim again. But it landed badly. Very badly. Because now dozens of neighbors were staring at Vanessa with open disgust. And cameras captured every second. That night, the HOA board called an emergency meeting. Hundreds attended. Some stood outside because the room filled completely. Vanessa entered expecting control. Instead, she walked into fury. One resident stood up immediately. "You abused your authority." Another shouted, "You targeted a widow." A veteran rose slowly from the back row. "I fought overseas for 20 years," he said, "and I've never seen someone declare war on Christmas decorations." The room erupted in applause. Vanessa tried defending herself. These policies were designed to preserve property value. "Stop lying," someone yelled. Then the hidden twist emerged. An older accountant named Mr. Levin raised a folder quietly. "I think residents deserve to see this." Inside were HOA financial records. Vanessa's face lost color instantly. Because buried in those records was something devastating. Over $20,000 in HOA funds had been spent over the past 4 months on consulting fees. The consulting company, owned by Vanessa's sister. The room exploded. People shouted everywhere. Phones recorded everything. Vanessa tried grabbing the papers. Mr. Levin pulled them away. "There's more," he announced. He revealed dozens of fines issued selectively, mostly toward elderly residents, widows, retired couples, people unlikely to fight back legally. Vanessa hadn't just been cruel. She'd been profiting. And suddenly, the Christmas decorations weren't the real story anymore. Margaret had accidentally exposed corruption. Police arrived before the meeting ended. Not because anyone planned it. Because someone live-streamed the entire thing. By midnight, Vanessa's reputation was ashes. News stations replayed the footage nonstop. Her employer placed her on administrative leave. Sponsors from her side business disappeared. Even her friends began distancing themselves publicly. But the internet wasn't done. People started donating to Margaret. At first it was small amounts. $5, $10, $20. Then a celebrity shared the story. And donations exploded. Within 4 days, over $400,000 had been raised. Margaret nearly fainted when neighbors showed her. "I can't take this," she whispered. "Yes, you can," Eli's mother told her gently. "You spent years giving to everyone else." But the most emotional moment came on Christmas Eve. The entire neighborhood gathered outside Margaret's home. Every single house on Cedar Grove had decorated in solidarity. Lights stretched across the street like rivers of color. Handmade signs filled lawns. "Christmas lives here." People carried candles while children sang carols. And in the middle of it all stood Margaret, wrapped in Daniel's red scarf, crying quietly. Eli approached holding his phone. "There's something you should see." He showed her the original video again. But this time he scrolled past the hateful comments, past the outrage, past the anger, and stopped at a message from someone thousands of miles away. "I lost my husband last year. I was going to skip Christmas. After seeing your decorations, I put my lights back up tonight. Thank you for reminding me grief and love can exist together." Margaret covered her mouth. Then another message. "My grandmother passed away this month. Your story helped my mom smile for the first time in weeks." And another. And another. Thousands, maybe millions. Her pain had become something unexpected. Hoping. Later that night, after most neighbors went home, Margaret sat alone on the porch beneath the glowing lights. Snow covered the yard softly. The nativity scene shined warmly again. And for the first time in years, the house didn't feel empty anymore. Then she noticed something sitting near the mailbox. A small wrapped package. No name. Inside was a wooden ornament. Hand-carved. Exactly like Daniel used to make. Attached was a handwritten note. You reminded the world what Christmas actually means. Margaret looked out across the glowing neighborhood. People laughing. Children running through snow. Music drifting through the cold night air. And above her door, illuminated once again, the old wooden sign glowed proudly. Christmas lives here.